So last week, we saw the Sanhedrin having a nighttime trial in the dark. They condemned Jesus as deserving to die, but they were actually ultimately powerless. They were not the ones actually in charge of their land. Rome was. And so they didn't have the authority to execute criminals. So they had to eventually turn it over to the Roman governor. The Roman governor at the time was Pontius Pilate. We meet him here in Mark 15. He's in all the Gospels. He's actually a pretty famous character in ancient history. We know a lot about him. And he had no real love for the Jewish people. He consistently angered them. He would bring in images of Caesar right into Rome and try to force people to worship the wrong god, worship the image of Caesar. There's a story in Luke 13 where Pilate apparently killed some Jewish worshipers while they were making sacrifices to their god. And Jesus is asked about that. What do we do about Pilate, who mingled the blood of our people with the sacrifices? And so there were plenty of moments where he angered the Jewish people. He had no real love for the Jewish leaders. And I think you can kind of see that even in the trial scene. He also is mandated by Rome to keep the peace. He's already let a couple riots happen on his watch, and he cannot let another riot happen. And so his hands are a little tied, and you can kind of see this back and forth with Pilate and the Jewish leaders, even in the way that he asked the question kind of tauntingly, do you really want me to execute your king? He's trying to kind of draw out what's going on here. Who is this man Jesus that they're bringing to me? And why should I care about his life or not? But at the end of the day, the chief priests rile up the crowd. They start shouting and chanting, "Crucify Jesus." And Pilate's hands are tied because he can't let another riot on his watch. And so he orders Jesus to be crucified, and he releases one named Barabbas. And Barabbas is a fascinating character. He is intentionally paralleled with Jesus. And I want to spend some time this week drawing out those parallels to compare and contrast Barabbas with Jesus. And what does it mean that Jesus takes the place of this man in particular? For one thing, his name, Barabbas. And actually, it's fascinating. If you look in Matthew, maybe in your footnotes, in the Matthew version, we see that he's also named Jesus, if you can believe it. It was a common name back then. But it would appear that Barabbas' full name was Jesus Barabbas. So we have Jesus Barabbas next to Jesus the Christ. And Barabbas, the name Barabbas means son of the Father. Bar Abba. So Jesus, son of the Father, next to Jesus, the Son of God. And the parallels keep continuing. Barabbas was not just an ordinary criminal. Rome couldn't execute or didn't generally execute ordinary criminals by crucifixion. They reserved that for special cases, for insurrection and rebellion, to say, you cannot defeat us. And if you try to fight against us, we're going to crucify you. And Mark tells us that Barabbas was a leader, a murderer in the insurrection. So he tried to overthrow Rome with the sword. And Rome caught him, and they're going to execute him. And so again and again, there's all these ways where you have the Son of the Father trying to fight Rome through insurrection, being crucified. And then you have the Son of God bringing his kingdom, but not through violence. And they're going to crucify him. And there's just a lot. You can keep going. There's more parallels. But what significance is it that Barabbas and Jesus are kind of swapping places? A couple questions that come to my mind. Why would Pilate be okay releasing Barabbas? He's a known murderer. What is Pilate thinking? And on that note, what are the people thinking? Why do they want a murderer back in their midst instead of Jesus, who hasn't ever hurt anybody? He's actually been preaching nonviolence his entire career. What's going on there? Why would the crowd adamantly call for Barabbas to be released back into their midst? And why would Rome be okay with that scenario? And on the flip side, why are both of those parties okay with killing Jesus? What's going on in Pilate's head? Why does he want Jesus to die? And especially for the priests and the people in the crowd who yell out, "Crucify him." What is it about Jesus that elicits that much anger and hatred, that they would actually cry out, "Crucify him"? And as Pilate asks, are you really going to let me crucify your king? He's mocking and he's sarcastic. But Mark wants us to read that as a true statement. Why are they crucifying their king? So we're coming to that fateful moment. Next week, we're going to look directly at Jesus' final hours, final words. But here, we get to pause and just notice what's going on in this scene and specifically dive deep into this parallel of Barabbas and Jesus. Jesus is literally taking the place of this rebel, this insurrectionist. And that's really significant. So thanks, everyone. Looking forward to diving in this week.